Greetings, fellow Homo sapiens. Today I'm here with Sahir. Sahir is a vocalist, MC, songwriter, and generally a man about town. Welcome to the program.
Dope.
Hey, there you go.
What's up, bro?
I like that. That was pretty different, pretty original. I didn't. It's original because nobody else has come with that line.
Yeah, man, I've been actually obsessing over Rick and Morty, man. I've been watching that series again and again to just find out, these subtle inner layers.
It's super fast paced, right? Like, I haven't seen. How many seasons are there at this point?
Four.
So I haven't seen the fourth season. I saw the first three.
Yo,
I think the first season was my favorite. I really loved that.
Yes.
That miniverse, microverse episode. I think that's got to be the best one.
On the fourth season, you're gonna flip out. The fourth season is some historical stuff happening.
Shit.
Rick is going against God, bro.
Oh,
This is.
All right.
It's really subtle layers, man. These guys are putting into the whole idea of Rick being this demigod himself and having this ego trip all the time, right? Like it's just It's just too intense, man. The fourth season is just getting too intense now.
Yeah, a lot to keep track of. I think basically what they back when I was growing up, we didn't have the luxury of streaming shows, watching episodes again.
Yeah, man.
We didn't even have like box sets on like DVDs and that kind of stuff. So the shows were simpler because you only got to really watch them once until they went into reruns, maybe like later. But I think now, like create more and more over the last 20 years, and it's 20 years. I can't believe it's been that long since I was a teenager. But like the creators of these shows understand that you can pack in a lot more content, a lot more detail, and then they try to make these things have a lot of the rewatch value, which is cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't really watch too many shows. I mean, I want to. Like, sometimes I judge people. It seems like I'm judging people. Now, like, let's get it straight. I actually do judge people who are like really into Game of Thrones. Back when that was a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I proudly have never seen an episode of Game of Thrones.
Same.
And hearing other people talk about Game of Thrones and just sitting there and just watching them freak out, sometimes threatening each other with violence if like somebody like gives away a spoiler or something. It's like, what is going on with you people? And it's like you're ruining your lives watching this thing, and it's so long, so many seasons. That kind of thing I judge, but shows in general, I have a little bit of FOMO because I know that there are a lot of really good shows. People talk about The Wire, people talk about Breaking Bad, and there's many Fargo, many others. And I'm either doing music or I'm taking online courses or listening to lectures or reading, and that's kind of like what I choose to do with my time.
More informative stuff, right? Like
and I like that. Sounds condescending. It makes people like when you say that, it sounds like you're trying to be like, oh, I only listen to lectures, but that's not really what it is. It's just like that's kind of where what I've chosen to do, right? So that's
I know what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
This was the same idea I had, about consuming media, but once I started getting into visual direction, it changed, Then it just didn't become entertainment. It was also research at the same time.
There's lots you can learn. There's lots you can learn from it, right? And I'm missing out on that specific stream of education, right? That learning about film and that kind of thing.
I just saw Doctor Who, which is like a 2005 show, right? And I can see where Rick and Morty takes inspiration from, according to time concepts and the idea of paradoxes and multiple universes and all of these theories. It's already done by Doctor Who. It's like this really big, like 12-season story, and this guy has already done most of the stuff we're seeing in batches from Gravity or Rick and Morty and all these sci-fi guys with a sense of science with the sci-fi, element to it.
And also the ambient level of science knowledge that the average person knows is a little bit higher. I think it's going back down now.
Yeah.
I think we were getting smart. Like the average person's general knowledge was getting better and better and better, maybe until about like 5 years ago. And now it seems like people are getting stupider. Like all of a sudden, like people believe in like flat Earth and all weird kind of things.
I think the
But,
internet is just filled with too much information, man, and that is just leading to, excessive information flow, which is now misinformation and half truths mixed with
Yep.
like real information and truth.
Yep.
And then it's weird. It's like this dark times, but people don't know that they're consuming half of this shit, has no source value, has no backup data to it, has no journalistic approach towards that information and its source. So it's kind of delusional, for people to just start feeding themselves with all of this information, and then they have weird guilt and these weird pent up emotions about things they can't even control.
Yeah, or even explain sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's also extra confusing because it's not even like it would be easier if you just knew that one source of information was just always bad information and one source of information was always, but it's not even like that. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, oh, these people, sometimes they get something right. And like for certain types of topics, it's good to pay attention to this magazine. But then like if they're, for these other types of topics, they're wrong. So you can't even make like a general rule and say, oh, like, this publication or this media outlet is always bullshit. But that's what we would like it if it was that easy. So, or even like this person, like this expert, like you have experts that are right sometimes, and then sometimes they're totally wrong. So you kind of have to develop your own skills in terms of assessing information. And most regular people
finding out BS.
Most regular people don't got the time to do that. I mean, that's actually why I spend so much time reading and like listening to lectures and stuff. Is because I started to notice like around probably just about a year before I moved here. I moved to Bombay in 2015. And I started to notice, especially in Facebook, like, okay, I signed up for Facebook in 2007, right? And so when Facebook started, it was just like, okay, you connect with your friends. Every now and then people post a photo of what they're doing.
That's it.
Maybe. And then it didn't happen overnight. It was just like gradually, it went from like pictures of people's kids and pictures of people's food and fun messages with your friends to slowly, it was like a place where people would share news. And then it was a place where the news was actually at, like the news would actually have their own accounts and own pages. And what I was noticing was that I never tried to get to that point, but all of a sudden I would be scrolling through my Facebook and notice that there was like just lots of news, and I was actually getting my news from Facebook. And then I started to notice that like I was getting really shitty news, or I remember like around 2013, 2014, you'd get like all these weird top 10 lists, and the shitty thing is it hijacks your brain. So you will click on the like top 10 ways to be successful, or top 7 things you need to do, top 7 things successful people do. And you're reading this garbage, and it's just mostly garbage. And like I was doing that for like some months, maybe like 6 months. And when I realized, why am I reading this garbage? Like, this is nonsense. Like, not even nonsense. Sometimes it's repetitive. Like, didn't I just read this exact same list
in a different format?
Like 2 weeks ago? What the fuck? Yeah. And so then I was just like, if I don't take some responsibility for the type of shit that's coming at me, then this is gonna get bad. I'm gonna get really dumb. So I remember like explicitly in 2014, I like made it a point to like look at everything that I was following. And that I had pages that I had liked, and I like unliked and unfollowed things that I just knew were stupid. And then I just went out and looked for like better news sources, followed them, and then I also made sure that I tried to find. I think the most important thing that people forget to do or are scared to do is to find like a news source that gives information that you mostly disagree with, or from a point of view that you disagree with but is smart. Because it's easy enough to find like a stupid news source that you disagree with and just follow it to make fun of it, right? Like you and I can pull up a clip of like Arnab Goswami and like laugh at it and be like, what the fuck is this guy? He's an idiot. But like, and the Indian media situation is totally fucked in a special kind of way. But
we rank lower than Pakistan. In terms
it's so like that shit. I mean, I don't even want to get started on that. That's a different scene. Like trying to find intelligent voices.
Tell you this story though.
Sorry,
there's this really interesting story about the news. One of my really close friends from college, he did this experiment, right? He did this on his own. Right? He just wanted to just prove it to all of us. And we also really were talking about this topic, same thing around 2015. And he did this count check, all right? So every time there'd be something negative being said, he'd click his counter, right? And he'd do this every day, 1 hour. The times that there was something negative being said to something positive being said was to a ratio of, by our end calculation, 536 to 1.
Oh man, brutal. That's horrible.
Do you get the... So, like every time the media is propagating something more fearful or something more violent than to something really nice that someone did. Yeah. Even though it's happening always, all the time around the world, they don't want to talk about that. They'd rather talk about the bad stuff always.
They focus on the bad stuff. They focus on but they also focus on... They don't even focus on the right bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they'll sometimes make up bad stuff when there's like actual serious bad stuff that people need to know about. And, people have slowly been getting brainwashed, and it's really... It's kind of scary because you see like weird... like narratives about our culture. You see like people trying to rewrite history and shit. Yeah. And that stuff.
Alter minds, brainwash a few folks. And WhatsApp messages, man, they are leading, the
WhatsApp
world
University.
to the
My mom is quite old, and I keep having to tell her, Mom, like, listen, don't
tell me about
forward things on WhatsApp. And that's something like if somebody's listening outside of India, like that we have sort of we call it WhatsApp University. Like people just get their information about the world from WhatsApp, and it is just garbage information. And there are teams of people that are hired to pump out this garbage. And like there have been like more than one violent incident that's been propagated because of WhatsApp. Instigated, because of what. So that stuff is really serious, and I could go on about it for a long time, and I could probably even get myself into trouble talking about it too much. So I mean, when it comes to finding intelligent sources of information that I disagree with in India, I don't even know where to look, because I think it's way more serious. Like the type of false information that's coming out from here is just so extreme.
I think it's just journalism at par. If you look at music journalism as well, I think, I'm sorry if I'm being an asshole here, but it's really bad.
Yeah?
Most of the people writing articles...
That's interesting. I'd like to hear you talk about that.
Most of the people writing articles about music or generally critiquing music have this very childish approach towards writing, something about this piece of music where they're just clearly stating facts. They're just clearly stating that this is made by this guy, produced by this guy wrote it, and this guy performed it. And this song is about one-liner and it's done.
They don't give an opinion.
I thought...
They just say, this album exists.
Yeah, they don't have an opinion at all.
This song exists.
Right? Like, why don't you start numbering stuff? Like, why don't you rate it? Give it some stars. Like, tell us, like, should we be really listening to this, or is it okay if we leave it out and, like, maybe catch up some next time?
Yeah.
There's no one talking that way. I'm sorry, but I have to call out, a lot of music journalists for this. And I'm not going to take names or start shouting out to people that own big brands and can have a very significant impact on this whole situation. But I think it's time that they stop these interns, which are, just kids writing these articles, and they take someone who might just charge them a bit more, but would do something right.
Yeah. I think it has to come from a passionate underground voice, because, I hear what you're saying, and I don't really disagree with you. I think you're right. Like when I read certain articles, it is just very almost descriptive. It doesn't give you like an opinion on whether you should, like whether I like this record or you should listen to it. It's just like, yeah, such and such record was released. It sounds like this, and such people were involved. But I can maybe like make an argument for that type of journalism. If you think about the fact that, like, okay, I've been here for over 5 years, and the indie scene is just constantly on the come up over here. Like, it's grown so much in the 5 years that I've been here, and it was already on the come up before I got here. Obviously, like it has. It has nothing to do with me switching geographies. That's obvious. But when a scene is kind of bubbling up like that and sort of exploding, you almost need like a bit of a supportive voice rather than a critical voice. You know what I mean? Like if the scene is like sort of just getting on its legs and people are like, okay, this album is garbage. This person is somebody you should listen to. You shouldn't listen to that person. If you start on that tip too early, then it's possible you could like, you know, muffle out or muzzle out.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, I totally get that part.
Yeah.
But at least have an opinion. I'm not saying, you know, that be really disrespectful and say this is trash.
Yeah, I think somebody in the underground should step up and start. I think that's the type of thing that has to start as a passion project. Maybe even you could do it, right? Like maybe somebody has to officially say, okay, like I'm gonna write reviews. I'm not just gonna like write an article that says that an album exists. I'm gonna write reviews, and I'm gonna say that this album is like 4 out of 5, and I'm gonna say that this is 2 out of 5. Like. Like I think somebody could take the initiative to make that happen. I think it's probably
I'm trying.
Yeah,
bro.
do it. I mean, that's needed as well. Like people do need that.
Yeah.
I think speaking as somebody who's like contributed a few projects here and there in the scene, it's really helpful if you know that like you can lean on a publisher to get your stuff out there to like at least let people know that this music is there, because you know in India we're competing against Bollywood, right? Like that's the thing that takes up the most space, and so it's good that we can reach out to certain publications just to get, just to get a bit of PR.
Yeah, a certain set of exposure.
On the flip side, you have the publications that are actually like Rolling Stone here actually writes about the scene here, right? Like which is shocking. Like for example, in Canada, if I'm just like some indie artist starting out, it would be like really hard to get a publication like Rolling Stone to pay attention. And then on the flip side, people wouldn't even take it seriously because people don't even associate Rolling Stone with like something that's going to report on like small time acts and stuff.
Yeah.
So like it's good that like you have that sort of name, international brand that is willing to write about local artists that are like, that helps at a certain level. That helps. But I think you've hit on something that's true, that you also do need to have somebody that's like critical and you know, tastemakers and stuff.
This, you know, I don't know, but I've seen Rolling Stones India not covering a lot of acts that really deserve it.
Yeah.
For example, Peter Cat Co's Bismillah was not featured on Rolling Stones after a very long amount of time after its release, you know. While according to me, this is one of the best mixed, mastered, recorded, composed albums from the indie scene during 2018.
Peter Cat, it's amazing. It's phenomenal. And if anybody's out there,
and I do not get it how it takes you so much time, you know, to just like, it's not even that Peter Cat has been doing this for like less amount of time. I saw them back in High Spirits in 2013, and I was like, you know, to all of my friends, that these guys, mark my fucking words, these guys are fucking going to blow up, and you won't even understand when this happens. And that's what happened. You know, that's what happened with Nazy. And like, I don't know, somehow I can just see some people up on stage and I know that there's something in them.
Yeah.
And that's why I really wanted to start this blog thing also, like, you know, just critiquing stuff and also saying how good this is, you know, creating paramount standards for, you know, people to look up to. All right, fuck Bollywood, but this is the benchmark we can reach as an indie band, or
I think you should do it. I think you're in a
artist,
good position to start doing it. You should. I mean, like, like I said, I think if it comes from the heart, like it's pretty clear you're passionate about it. So if it comes from the heart, then it'll be, you know, and that's just like, I'm a big proponent of just creating content, like, and not paying attention to if somebody's necessarily giving you a paycheck for it. Like, I just started this podcast for like no reason, right? Like, I just wanted to do it. No one's sponsoring me to do this in any meaningful way, and I was just like, hey, this could be a good thing.
But it's really, I just saw you. I was hearing your and Jason's podcast, and you know, it was really nice to listen to you guys talk about the loudness wars, because this was something I've been tripping on since the last 2-3 months, since I've started sending stuff to Analog Gear, and it's coming back, and it's like it's on this -0 clipping with like this shitloads of fucking loudness, which I have no control over, and I've been wondering, man, I don't really need this much loudness. What the fuck do I do with so much loudness? It's just going down. It's just gonna the penalty is gonna be really high on this one. It's like -9 LUFS and like -5 0.5.
That's -9 is crazy. But the cool thing is the loudness wars is like I mean, as I think Jason said it in that episode, that like I think Spotify and the streaming services have really killed the loudness wars, because like I'll give you an example. I'm right in the middle of we're trying to release a few songs with an artist that I'm working with, and it's the first time where we've asked the mastering engineer to make it quieter. And there's this plugin, you can on the web as well, but there's a plugin called Loudness Penalty, where like, because what happens, these streaming services balance, like if your track is too loud, like perceived loudness, they will bring the volume down. So if you master it really loud,
dBs don't matter anymore, bro. Yeah, dBs don't matter. Your peak values don't matter. It doesn't matter, like, if you're peaking at -2 or -4. So I realized that true peak value doesn't really matter if it's just about LUFS, right? So I told my mastering engineer, you know what? Just give me like a loudness setting of around -14. I don't care where you peak.
-14 is a great benchmark. Yeah, -4. I mean, even these podcasts, when I like finish the editing, I try to get them in that range. I mean, I'm not super good, and I don't really have a good metering plugin for LUFS. Like, it's a pretty basic one. But I mean, I just try. I set like -14 as like as a benchmark. -9 is crazy loud.
Yeah, that's Travis Pro. That is all of the new trap stuff. So if you've noticed, a lot of these new trap guys, what they're doing is they're clipping the signal, man. That is how they are achieving that weird jar tone. So what they do is in FL Studio, there's this option on the preamp settings where you can clip the signal with just boosting it.
Yeah.
So you boost it all the way around and it starts clipping, right? And then what you do is you add another distortion plugin to just gain change and put the clipped signal back to like around, -6, -3 and use that fucking clipped signal for your 808. And there's no kick. These guys have killed the kick. There is no kick
you
in
end up
these compositions.
losing. If you don't do it in a smart way, then you end up losing losing low end and all kinds of weird stuff.
It's crazy,
but like,
though.
there are certain styles of music that sound good when they're over compressed.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like that's the thing. Like if you over compress or over limit it to be really loud, and like if you just upload it to Spotify and Apple Music, they're just going to turn it down. Like you have to really want that sound of the song sounding like it's smashed. Like that has to be part of the aesthetic for you to justify.
That's what they're doing. You know, that's how they're achieving that sound. And it was strange. At first, like the first time when I came to know about that, at like 19, I was like, no, I can't do this. But then when I did it, it was really fun.
It's fun to mess around with that. But it's also funny because it's only sinking in now, especially with that loudness penalty plugin, where you can measure how much all the streaming services are going to turn down your track. And so, like this is the first time that we've with these last two singles. There's one that's about to come out, and the song "Age of Limbo" that I've produced for Mali. It's the first time where we actually sent it back to the mastering engineer. It was like, actually, can you turn the loudness down a bit, because it's not it's actually too much. And it just a couple of years ago, when I was producing the Cognac Net, we asked to have it louder. And it's always been like, that's pretty much always been the case. And even when I'm mastering at home, when I was learning as an amateur, I was like trying to see, how can I get this to be louder? How can I get it to be louder? And it's so recent that like now it's like, okay, no, we need to keep the dynamics. We don't need to go overboard. And it's funny how the streaming services have changed the game in that way. It's really, really interesting. So I mean, hopefully we get more dynamic sounding records. It's another funny thing about the loudness wars, especially when it was taking off in the 90s and the 2000s, especially in the 2000s. Is kind of like you have all this recording technology that's improved so much, like such a leap in recording technology, such a leap in different miking techniques and like the amount of tracks you can use and stuff like that. And so you record something really nicely and mix it really nicely, and then it just gets smashed in the mastering process. And there were so many albums that were just destroyed,
and we didn't have good playback that process.
Time. Like big famous albums, right? Like that.
Consumers, I think at that point didn't have that good playback that time, you know.
No, they did. They did, but they were just
2000.
like in the 2000s, you had pretty good playback. Like maybe like I don't like an album that when I listen to it now, and it sounds super smashed is Kingdom Come by Jay-Z, which is not one like it's hilarious, and like that's a funny record too because it was his
But bro, that's
post-retirement record.
also that MPC. That's this MPC distortion happening on a lot of those records. You know,
Is it MPC?
A lot of the
I don't
drum
know if I
kits-
believe that because like you don't have to have. Yeah, I don't know I think it's just shitty mastering because like if you listen to the variety of producers that like say Kingdom Come, right? There's a bunch of different producers on that. They're not necessarily all of them are using MPCs, and so like if you just listen to one of those tracks and compare it to anything that's out now, even one of the newer Jay-Z records, it like you can hear the distortion. You know, and
not even that. If we just go like one step further, the Black Album, like that is way different. The Black Album sounds way different.
I'd like to see. I remember when I was listening. I bought the Black Album when it came out.
Yeah,
that you know. So I didn't know enough about mastering to notice, and to be honest, I haven't really hauled out the Black Album and like listened to it in that way. Anytime recently, but see, of course. I mean, I know the album like off the top of my head. I know it, like I know the track listing, all that stuff. But it's, I mean, that was such a huge album. It was Jay-Z's like quote retirement album, and I remember at that time. I mean, I want to have. I'll go on a fun rant about Jay-Z and why I'm a big fan of him in a minute. But I didn't know anything about mastering when I was listening to that album. I was in my early 20s, and so. I would doubt that like that album would probably be smashed too because it's right in the middle of the 2000s. Like any major label album that was coming out in the 2000s is going to be pretty smashed. There was only a few exceptions, but yeah, even in that era, you're going to get stuff that's really, really, really crazy loud. It's not until pretty recently where artists realize that they shouldn't be at it. And then there's like, again, certain styles of music that actually the smash sound is part of the sound.
With hip hop,
right?
I think, that's a thing. I've noticed, like if you keep seeing with generations and generation, everyone wants the kick more out. As we go further beyond, hip hop's evolution, you see the bass and the kick segment taking more space in than they ever did, right? Like when trap comes in, this shit is fucking off the charts with sub bass and bass and
the sub bass is also another
hitting.
One. Yeah, like the sub bass is another interesting thing.
That.
It's really confusing if you're just starting out how loud the subs should be, and if you're just starting out, then if you're a hip hop head especially, and you don't really know about mixing, and you just sort of in the beginning you're just going to assume that the bass should just be really loud. Like obviously if it's low end, just crank it because like it just makes sense, right? That it to but the thing with sub frequencies and sub bass is actually like even on records where the sub really hits, you actually need to turn it down because especially like big system subwoofers, those things, like if you just touch them, like they go like like they'll the thing that a lot of people don't realize is you gotta really control those subs, and they don't need to be super loud, at least in terms of decibels. Like maybe you can limit them and turn them down. I mean, there's lots of different ways, and then also depends
even clean them up, man. Cleaning like the 30 range, I've seen like with sub basses cleaning the 30 range and just these small cues around 20, 30 that just helps mold it into this nice round sounding sub bass.
Well, also depends on the type of bass line too, because it's like like if you have like a long drone type of bass line that we have, like say an 808 like trap sounding low end versus like say deep house where like the kick and the bass synth kind of are working together in a totally different way, and it's more rhythmic. Like in each situation, and that's just two. There's more different, and that's the thing with low end is you can go on for ages about like the different ways to make, and you get a new type of track in a new style, or like there's a new rhythmic or groove aspect that you haven't dealt with before, and you got to figure out a new way to make the kick drum and the bass
handle that.
sort of cooperate, and then like within that, the sub frequencies of each, like there's so many different, like there's some tracks where the kick drum has no sub and all the sub is coming from the bass. There are other tracks where actually like the kick drum and the bass is the same thing. There are other tracks where it's like actually we want more sub from the kick. And then, you go into rock music, it's a totally different ball game. Totally. And so, if there are any like mix engineers that are out there listening that are starting out that are confused and are trying to wrap their head around it, the most important thing to remember is to know what your tools do, like know what a compressor does and know how to use rather than like going on a tutorial. Like there's no one approach or one trick that you learn that like, okay, like now that I learned this trick, I can mix low end. It's not like that. Like you're always going to get new weird types of scenarios where you have to like think about, okay, like the groove of this track is like this. So, and the kick drum and the bass drum is interacting in this way. So I have to do X, Y, and Z. And the only way that you're going to be able to come up with those solutions is if you kind of inside out know what the compressor is doing, know what the EQ is doing, know what the saturation like is doing, the limiting, the different the gates. Using a gate is another really good way to manipulate low end sounds. Lots of different options. And so it's more important to know the tools. And that's another reason why I'm not a big fan of these plugins that are just like one knob. Like, how like they'll have like Sound Goodizer or like the Waves one knob series where you just turn one knob and it just does something. And it's like, if you don't understand what the plugin is doing, then you won't be able to apply it in a new situation as well, right? Like, so you have to really get into the guts of like, okay, like a basic compressor, all of these, I understand what all of the parameters mean.
I generally like advise folks, do not take that Sound Goodizer or that Sausage Fattener or all these one knob Waves plugins on there, mix. Do not do this. Do not try to cheat your way through a mix. Just do it the right way.
Or you can use it if you kind of like understand what it's doing, or if it's just like a one time like okay.
And if it's like this subtle thing, right? It's this very subtle highs you want to increase in a certain way. All right, you put a Sound Goodizer, it's gonna increase your transients in a certain way. All right, you're cool with it. But relying on these things as a part of your technique, I'd say is really
you can't use it. You can't put them in as like a template type situation. That's not gonna do anything for you. We're talking about the Black album. I guess I really quickly want to say that I'm a huge fan of Jay-Z. That can be a controversial opinion sometimes. He's not my favorite MC, but I think he's like Jay-Z is special for me because when I was like a teenager, I was not a fan of Jay-Z. I never really knew his music or heard his music too much. But the hip hop that I like started out, because I'm from a small town in Canada, right? Like on an island, Newfoundland. So like I'm pretty removed from hip hop culture. So the first hip hop and rap records that I would listen to were just a bit more, something that was more digestible for like, an Indian kid, like middle class Indian kid growing up in a small town in Canada. And so I definitely did not understand what an MC like Jay-Z was talking about. Even it just seemed really like what does this mean? Why is he talking about all this scary shit? Then so I got into hip hop through things like The Roots, Lauryn Hill, a little bit of Wu-Tang sometimes, but even that was sometimes like, wow, what are these guys even on about? But Talib Kweli, Common. Then we had like Canadian hip hop acts like the Rascals and.
Obviously, you're into all of these NY guys, but so you have to come across Jay-Z one point of time. If you
eventually. Well, no. What happened was there was that Jay-Z ended up putting out. It's not the first unplugged hip hop album, but it was marketed as that, where Jay-Z did like MTV Unplugged, and the Roots were the backup band for that. And I was a huge fan of the Roots. Still am a huge fan of the Roots. And actually, Malik B, who's a former member of the Roots, recently passed away. And I mean, like, rest in peace, Malik B. And I think we all need to take. If anybody out there who's a fan of the Roots, take some time, go down memory lane, listen to some of those old Roots songs with Malik B on them. Because and
really sick, man.
And if anybody didn't know, the song "Water" by the Roots from their album Phrenology is basically Black Thought's like song about Malik B, because he had left the band at that time, and it was basically Black Thought reaching out and saying like, yo, like you need to like get your shit together, like I love you, brother, like I don't know what you're doing, because I guess he had gotten
Black
into,
Thought's
like,
my
drugs.
top 5 guy, huh?
Oh
Black
yeah,
Thought's
like,
my top
like at a
5
personal level, well, even in terms of like greatest, I think you got to kind of put Black Thought in there. Like, there's that crazy clip of him just doing that super long freestyle. Like that guy is crazy, and like just the fact that the Roots pretty much are guaranteed to practice every day because they're on Fallon. Like, they've just become one of the best bands in the universe. That's another story. But it was because the Roots were the backup band on that Jay-Z MTV Unplugged that I was like, okay, I gotta listen to this. So I went out and I copped the CD.
Yeah.
And at that time, I still like really didn't understand Jay-Z's flow, and I didn't really relate to the lyrics, but all the beats were amazing. And of course, like the Roots did a great job playing those beats, but the beats were amazing anyway because Jay-Z just had access to some of the best producers. And one of my favorite all-time producers, Just Blaze. Like, he's done so many tracks with Jay-Z.
Oh, damn.
Just Blaze.
Oh,
Just Blaze is like,
crazy.
I mean, for me, my top hip hop producers is Dilla and Just Blaze, right? And Just Blaze,
Obviously, Dilla's on top.
Dilla goes without saying these days. Like I've been rocking Dilla like for ages, but
college, bro. College.
It's cool. It's great. It's excellent that Dilla gets the sort of worldwide respect that he deserves across genres. So I'm not complaining that everybody loves Dilla. That's a good thing that everybody loves Dilla.
Yeah.
But the Just Blaze.
But it's very few people who understand swing. It's not everyone. Like, a lot of my friends who listen to hip hop have no clue about Dilla, and they don't even want to know because they don't really understand the sense of swing that he puts in.
Yeah.
So it's just people who
it's so
are into
unique
that.
for the time. That the reason it's sort of like trying to appreciate the Beatles. In the sense that, like, that what they did was so foundational to everything that came after it that, like, if you grew up in my time or your time or our time, it's really hard to understand how revolutionary that was for the time because it's just in everything we hear now. And Dilla is like that. Yeah. Like, that swing that Dilla has is in so much music that we don't even understand that it was a crazy revolutionary thing that he did.
Yeah. When electronic musicians, people that are making stuff off their computer, making it sound so real and organic in nature just because of this timing. Yep. It's just timing and velocity. Well, and it just changed the whole groove.
That's the part of it that makes it overdone now, is because Dilla's been so influential that you hear it almost too much. Like his influence, it's everywhere. And it's influenced jazz. Format. At this point, it's influenced new jazz musicians that are coming out of jazz colleges are coming with that Jay Dilla swing. And so, it's just pervasive. So I was listening to I was like in my early 20s, I was listening to MTV Unplugged Jay-Z, and I was pretty amazed by the performances, and I was compelled to like check out the albums. But again, it was mostly because of the beats. I didn't understand what Jay was talking about. And I didn't also understand his flow. Like, the flow didn't sort of register with me right away. And so I was like, okay, like these beats are dope. So I just went and, picked up Blueprint. And then shortly after that, Black Album came out. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. And then you're starting to get an idea of like what Jay-Z is about, like his life. He's a storytelling rapper. So you're hearing about his back. And so slowly the story is starting to fill in, and I'm like, okay, I get what he's saying. I'm sort of starting to get where he's coming from. Again, it's such a different scenario from what I grew up with, right?
Yeah.
And basically the reason why I love Jay-Z so much is because he's the only artist that I can think of where like I came to become a huge fan of his gradually over the course of like 10 years. Like, I started off like liking the beats and not understanding the lyrics and the flow. Then slowly, like, kind of starting to get the lyrics and what he was talking about. You're like, okay, that's kind of clever. I see okay, cool. Then, like, he retires. He comes with Kingdom Come, like, and it was like, okay, fine, whatever. It's like that. Show me what you got is like crazy.
Didn't live up though.
What?
I agree though. Kingdom Come didn't really like live up to my
It was
expectations.
like
as well.
for me.
It's too cluttered.
I was like in a medium level fan of Jay-Z when Kingdom Come, like before Kingdom Come came out. I was like not a huge fan of his yet, but I was like, okay, I like Jay-Z, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. And my theory about his retirement, because nobody believed that he was actually going to retire. So my theory about his retirement was that, okay, he'd put out all these like albums and became really commercially successful. So now that he's retired and he'd done all this stuff, the albums that he puts out after his retirement are going to be like these artistic, conceptual masterpieces. And Kingdom Come was not that. And so I was disappointed.
Yeah.
I was expecting him to just like rebrand himself as Sean Carter and like come with some real artistic like next thing. And like looking back now, there are some cool tracks on that album that I like to rock to. Obviously, like Show Me What You Got. I think that's the name of the song with the saxophone sample. That's one of Just Blaze's most crazy beats as well. You know, but that album was disappointing for me at the time.
Yeah.
But then after
and also
that,
talking about rebranding, have you just heard G-Eazy's new song?
I haven't.
Bro, that guy just what happened? He just switched.
Happens. That happens though. I mean, I haven't heard it, but that's also something we have to get comfortable with. Like sometimes artists make, they change their whole scene. Sometimes it happens in a way that we like. Sometimes it happens in a way we don't like. But there are always other things that we.
But
we
Jay-Z's
can
done that
listen
time
to.
and time again, though. Like if you notice, he's done that time and time again, and somehow people have,
But he's also always
accepted it.
maintained the essence of being Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not like he's just all of a sudden rapping like someone else. Like he's always basically rapping like himself in different incarnations.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Like
Yeah.
Kingdom Come was like kind of at the time I was like, meh. But then after that he came with that American Gangster soundtrack, and that like a lot of people were like, critics loved it. People were kind of like, meh. But I loved that album because it was like, actually that was a concept album. Like concept album was what I wanted from Jay-Z post-retirement that I didn't get in Kingdom Come. That American Gangster thing was like, that was like a concept album. And it was cool. It was like basically Jay-Z rapping about what would have happened if he hadn't quit, quit hustling and become an MC. Is like, what would his life have been? It was him just imagining what his life would have, and that was like such a cool idea. And I really, and that helped me even understand his backstory even more, like, and his life story even more in a weird kind of way, even though it was like so imaginative. And that was when I was like, okay, like my fandom for Jay-Z was just increasing.
I think it's the same with me. That's how I like started liking Jay-Z. He grows. He doesn't suddenly come up to you and you're like,
Yeah, well, there's a really interesting story. Like if you follow the story from the beginning, it's a really interesting story. It's also he is like the kind of archetype of like an MC and also like the hip hop story. Like he came up in such a time in the sense that he came up with hip hop, right? Like he started in those ciphers
as it was growing
in
up.
Brooklyn, like around the time when hip hop was being born or shortly afterwards or something like that. And like so you get the hip hop archetype, and you get the whole thing that follows through, and then he like ages and matures, and at each point you get to follow this story. And I find that really interesting, and I find it really interesting that he's definitely an older fella now, and he's rapping about his life, and there's nobody else that's like his age that's been around as long as he has that's that relevant. And as he changes and as he grows, you hear about the different types of issues that he's tackling. I just think that's really interesting. And so now, like, even though like at a personal level, like he is one of my favorite. I don't know who, like, if I'm trying to think top 5. So like Black Thought is in there. Both of the guys from Outkast, like Andre 3000, Big Boy, gotta go in there. I'm trying to think who else would I put in that. I don't know, maybe like MF Doom. See, it starts to get fuzzy after that, like because there are a lot of MCs you can pick from. You got like a lot of people would put Nas in there. A lot of people would kind of look at you funny if you don't put Nas in there. Then there, you could. It can get out of control pretty quickly, and I don't know where Jay-Z would fit in that, but he's close to the top.
And
definitely
people start getting really
for me.
crazy, man. It just goes into a 15 and then 20, it's just too many color palettes,
exactly.
man. Everyone's has this different format and storytelling and concept of writing. Like the way Nas writes, it's way more complex and way more story oriented than to rhyming or rhyme formats and multiple rhyming formats like what Black Thought does, or very few writers do that. Eminem or people like who are very into flow oriented rap, right?
There's so many different flows. And also, like, for me, when I'm evaluating an MC, I always like to say there's like 3 dimensions that you can evaluate an MC, and like the best MCs hit it on all 3 dimensions. But like there's like the technical rhyme flow, right? Like there's a technical, like how complex are your rhyme schemes? How interesting are your punchlines?
Yeah.
And just from a pure technical point of view, like how awesome is your flow? Then there's like the storytelling aspect of it. Like there are some rappers that don't do any storytelling. It's just all like just pure technique, right? And then there's other rappers that tell really evocative, imaginative stories, and really they connect with you emotionally and stuff like that. Yeah. And then there's the charisma. There's like some rappers that like they're awesome, but it's like almost fully based on charisma, right? Like, like Snoop Dogg is just like, he's a character. Like Snoop Dogg is the kind of like guy where you can just listen to him talk and it's just entertaining. Yeah. Like there are records where he's just talking and it sounds, and even in interviews, sometimes his regular speech sounds like he's rapping. Like the line between him just talking and rapping is like oftentimes not. Is not very distinguishable. I know. And so that's really interesting. And then there's the MCs that just combine all of them. Like say like a Kendrick Lamar. Like Kendrick Lamar hits it on every dimension, right?
J. Cole.
The Andre 3000 hits it on every dimension.
I think Jay, Kendrick are in this higher league, This is the most highest form of level a rap artist would reach, is that both of these guys produce, both of these guys have a very good idea of what to talk about. None of their stuff sounds like their predecessors, right? J. Cole is really intimate, really personal and vulnerable in a way, and Kendrick is really sarcastical and has this satire of this good guy trying to be around bad people and this mad world that he's living in, and both of them are very in tune with what they want to project themselves as and their music, which I would say before was very more personal oriented as to my story, but where with Kendrick and J. Cole, it's not just their story, but it's what they're standing for as well. That J. Cole stands for
there's a social
dreams.
Commentary.
Yeah. And there's certain things
and
that
on the
you
flip
associate.
side, there's like Drake. There's like Drake, which is like zero social commentary, but like lots of like, personal reflection.
Charisma, like you said,
Yeah. Like a lot of people will try and like I've heard people try to compare Drake and Kendrick and be like, who's better? And it's like,
there's no point.
I don't see how anyone can compare those two MCs. Like it's so different for me that I can't even make a sensible comparison between those two MCs. Like
that's like comparing fruits. Like how do you compare? How do you compare an apple
I don't
and
think
an orange?
it's possible.
Both of them
It's
are
like two
fruits.
different universes, It's like if you try, like I lean towards Kendrick just because of the social commentary and the type of, but like that's not fair to Drake because he just does something that's so different than that it's like you can't compare.
He is a culture vulture. Everyone knows that. He's always hopping on the tracks which he knows will blow up. He blew up with the Versace joint when no one really knew about Migos. Migos were on the come up. He's generally done that with so many songs and so many artists.
Well, he has.
Okay, he gives
but
them a
also
boost. I get that, but he's generally capitalizing.
Well, he has, but you also have like he really helped push the Toronto sound, right? Like that's the thing that like over 10 years ago. It's hard to keep track of time. Like, I don't know, like I have to kind of remind myself what year I'm in and then do the math. But like some time ago before Drake, like around the world, people wouldn't have known about a Toronto sound. But now like Toronto has like this distinct sound that's still pretty eclectic. And like he found those producers, and put them on. And so there's some judgment.
Noah 40 is the guy 110% responsible as much as Drake is for that Toronto sound.
Yeah, but speaking from the point of view of a producer, you at the end of the day you need a charismatic vocalist to get your sound out there.
Yeah.
And Drake was that for so it's you can't separate one from the other necessarily.
Yeah.
Right. Like if he was just putting out instrumentals, like maybe we wouldn't know that sound today, right? So there's some agency that I got to be willing to give Drake to like pick those sounds.
Yeah.
And again, like that's hard work. Like it doesn't matter. Like these artists like put out so much music. Like a guy like Drake put out so many tracks.
Yeah, man.
He's put out so many albums, and people don't realize how much work that is. I remember, like you'd have people kind of like making fun of him, whatever. But then like these same MCs that were making fun of him were sitting around just not releasing anything.
Any stuff, yeah. That's true.
So like what was sitting on their tracks like it's precious, taking their sweet time to put stuff out. In the meantime, this guy like put out so many tracks, so many albums, and I think like when you have an artist that puts out that many tracks, first of all, I just respect that work ethic.
Yeah.
And when you have an artist that puts out that many tracks, you're gonna have some of them that are gonna be like not so great, and you're gonna have some. If the artist is talented and knows what they're doing, you're gonna have some gems. And a lot of times when people criticize Drake, they focus on the not so great tracks that are definitely going to exist if you put out that much music, and then they sleep on the fact that there are these tracks that are just undeniably like really
were the dopest. I think his mixtapes, Come Up Season and Sooner or Later, was it?
Yeah,
that was one of the most iconic things I've heard. Like that was when he was really at par with what he was doing, I feel. Also,
and he also contributed to the 90s sound coming back.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I was kind of like getting sick of the rap in the 2000s, like the type of sound that was.
But
on
I
the
just
go
have this
in the 2000s.
problem with Drake is that he's really heavy on plagiarism. There are a lot of tracks where he's just plain quote unquote dragging and dropping or cutting and pasting it in. And
Curator.
Yeah, and I get it. You like in hip hop, it is a thing. You give shout outs to your inspirations or people you've been listening to by reciting their stuff. But there should be at least some form of branding that you've done this. Like if Travis Scott does it in what is that song, man, that fucking blew up with Drake. There are like 36 samples from 36 different rap artists where it's Biggie Smalls, it's Jam Master Flash, and there's like a bunch of people, and Travis talks about that. They're there in the credit list for the authors. Yeah. So just because it's this 1 or 2 line sample, he's put them on the author. So at least what I expect from Drake is to at least give credits to the author. I think writers now since a long time have not got the credit that is due to them. And
that's true. I mean, people are a little lazy with that, but I can't comment on it too intelligently because I haven't actually been following that stuff too much. Especially since I moved over here, I've been following it less and less. And I mean, as much of a hip hop head as I am, a lot of the music that I listen to in my free time now, not free time, but just while I'm just doing random shit at home, is a very strange electronic music that's quite dark. And so I've lost track of what like normal humans are listening to, and it's really funny. Like, so I've been working with Mally on her upcoming album and the single that she put out. And so we had a funny conversation. She kind of introduces me and keeps me up to date on what like normal human beings are listening to, or like good music for normal human beings. Like like we'll hang out. Before, obviously pre-COVID times, we'd be hanging out and she would show me very, very cool songs. And I'd always be so I'd be so surprised to hear the songs because like, I've just so fallen into this world of like very strange electronic music that nobody would listen to. And then that sometimes people were just like, are you okay, man? Like, I've had people come over to my house and hang out, and the music that I'm listening to like actually freaks people out. Like they question whether I'm like okay as a person because that's where I'm at right now. And I like that rabbit hole. It's cool. I like get interesting ideas from that rabbit hole.
Yo, you should
music.
check out this guy then, The Caretaker. Have you heard his whole
Oh
6-part
shit!
series.
I recently, it's that
Yeah.
6-hour album
Yeah,
that's like
yeah,
destroys
yeah,
your mind. Yeah. I recently found out about that, and I listened to the ending of it. And I mean, you know what the album is about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah, so it's
I don't know
actually
when you just.
been released through the course of time. He began around 2017. He did one
Mm-hmm.
release, which was phase 1. Then he did another on in 2018. Then the end of
Yeah.
2018. Then the beginning of 2019. Then mid 2019. And after that was the last.
I didn't realize it was that new.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually just
you know,
4
so
5
like
years
to,
old.
to people that are listening, the album it's a 6-hour long. Is it 6 parts or 5 parts? It's 6 parts.
It's 6
right?
parts. 6 parts of
6-part
different albums.
album of base. It's a sonic representation of a
dementia.
descent into Alzheimer's and finally death.
Yeah.
And it is intense. I
really
discovered this album just a couple of weeks ago. There was like a clip that showed up in my YouTube feed where it was like, "This is the album that destroyed me." Was the name of the YouTube
phase
clip?
1, man, I was crying by the end of phase 1. It was a very.
I mean, Alzheimer's is such a tragic
strange.
fucking thing.
and the way he's depicted
I was
it,
scared to listen to it, and
sonically, it starts with it sounds such reminiscent of a time where I haven't lived it, but I feel like I've lived it. And it's weird. It's putting me in this space of maturity that very very few musical pieces make me feel that way. And this guy has really hit the spot with his voicings. His voicings are very superb.
But I also just respect the commitment to a concept and just the total disregard for doing anything that's even in the ballpark of pop
took him 10 years.
or accessible.
It took him 10 years to finish this whole project. He was working with patients. He was talking to patients. He was actually doing a lot of research, about the whole idea of losing memory, the whole idea of residual memory, which also doctors talk about, when certain patients have certain memories which they can't leave traces of. And even science can't really explain how this is happening, since they should be wiped out clean. But it doesn't happen that way.
Alzheimer's is still not understood very well, and it's hard to get an account from the point of view of the people that are going through it for obvious reasons. But I mean, what a accomplishment, and I mean, how do you even make a record like that? Like, how do you make a record like that without going nuts?
Yeah, right. He almost engrossed himself so much, around this project that it took him 10 years, right? Like, imagine 10 years for this 6-hour. That is heavy.
It's crazy. I mean, it's so. I don't even have words to describe like the level of commitment. I mean, I respect that so much, and it's such a difficult topic. Like, wow, and listening. I mean, the comments. If you go on and find the YouTube clip of this album, like the comments underneath, some of them are crazy. Some of them are heartbreaking. Some people who have gone through, a family member with Alzheimer's. Like I read one really long comment by, I think, a teenage girl whose mother has early onset Alzheimer's, just talking about that. And then the other people that are, making sort of jokey comments like, if you take LSD and listen to this album, then you actually die. Like, people saying that kind of stuff. But it
internet trolls, bro.
Yeah, I'm shocked that you mentioned that. Like that.
I'm into variety ranges.
I'm really shocked that you mentioned, because I literally just found out about this record.
Yeah, bro, it's strange.
Just within the last 2 weeks.
I've always been off the chart with stuff that I listen to. Like, off the chart. It's random as fuck. I can switch to from the Parcels and some really nice vaporwave. Have you heard of this band called Jungle? They're into disco music.
No.
So okay. I just keep toggling, man. I just keep toggling genres again and again. I just get bored. I have this very ADHD mind with musical compositions. I just can't stick to stuff. That's why I guess.
Yeah, I've always listened to different kinds of music. Like, I've always been, not always, but in my adult life, I've been all over the place with genres. But over the last 5 years, I've just delved into some of the weirdest shit. Like, I used to think that I used to listen to weird music, but now, like, I'm just getting into strange music, but also dark, like things that are very dark. And none of the music that I make is dark enough for me. Like I'm always trying to figure out like how can I actually make really dark music, and it's really difficult. It's really difficult. Because dark is one of those things where if you don't do it right, then it just sounds
It's not
cheesy.
convincing. Yes, I was just gonna say that dark. If you can't convince me about that darkness, then it's not happening.
Then it's corny.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really it's
Strange, huh?
That's the challenge. Like how do you make
I don't know
something
how it's
sound so
easier
disturbing?
to like do happier stuff. You know, it's really easier to like get off with happier stuff because maybe like people assume that music just supposed to be happy, so there's nothing wrong with it. But I feel doing dark compositions is something really challenging, which I also try, accommodating in some compositions because I think sometimes I just get really positive-y and stuff, like really idealistic in my music.
It's difficult because I'm also like a pretty goofy person.
Yeah,
Like if you talk to me like like personally, if you're hanging out with me, like the more people hang out with me, they realize that I have a lot of dark, like my view of the world is pretty dark. I think the world is headed in a dark direction, and I see darkness like around. Like even though like I'm a friendly, cheerful guy. Like
are you like pro nihilism or what? Are you like pro nihilism and stuff like that?
no. See, like I wouldn't say I'm pro. Yeah, see, sometimes I get there, but I did you say pro nihilism?
Yeah. That means just
I don't even know if that makes sense. Pro nihilism, like. The pro part sounds too positive to go with the nihilism part, how do you like enthusiastically advocate for nihilism? That seems weird. So it's like the concept of being pro nihilist, that just seems strange to me.
Yeah, I just made that up.
It's not because that's what I want. Like I just have a dark view of the world. Like I've been through weird shit, and like I just feel like the world is going in a dark direction, but I'm also just kind of a goofy person. Like I'm pretty silly.
It is though. We live during Kali Yuga, man. This is Kali Yuga.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but people have also been saying that for a hot minute. But then again, these yugas are supposed to be super long, so maybe that makes sense. That's an interesting interpretation. It's not I'm willing to entertain that interpretation.
I think just the reference of Kali Yuga would, the concept about, what we were talking about, excessive information, misinformation, and half-truths. This is the time where, this is most dominant in nature, and what we call as conditioning is actually, a form of brainwashing. So you have this really stereotypical culture made around man, and everything revolves around man, putting... general, like if you go back in esoteric India or just, so I'm really heavy into history. I've just been like, so I've been...
I love history too. I'm big into it. Well, no, but just let's backtrack for a second. Assuming that there are some random non-Indian people listening, like put Kali Yuga in the context of the other yugas.
We have 3 yugas. We have the Satyug. Satyug is the time of gods.
Yeah, and these are like eras.
Yeah.
Or epochs. Epochs for the non-Indian audience.
And after that we have I forgot the second one. I just don't it's
the order. I even forget the order. But there's 4 of them.
Yeah. There's 4 of them, and we're on the last stage. In short, this is the last stage of humanity.
We're on the last one. The last one is just supposed to be the most horrendous and depraved.
Yeah, and as we can see, it is not really anything less.
Yeah, and then once this epoch is over, once the Kali Yuga is over, then it resets and things are quite nice. But the time scale involved is huge.
Yeah, because it's huge. It's like
you can say we're in the midst of Kali Yuga, but like if you look at the time scale of what it's supposed to be, I mean, we've been in it for like thousands of years.
Since misinformation became a thing,
so this is just
I would assume anywhere around 800 to like 500 years we've been living in this age, which is
let's do you have your like I feel like I want to look it up.
So it's Satyug in the first one. this is the first inception where man has all knowledge of the universe and is one with the universe, understanding that there is unlimited source of power coming in which he can tap into.
Are you looking that up right now?
Yeah.
So how many years? Like, there's this weird mathematical aspect to it where it's like,
yes, it's according to the stars. So if you want to calculate an era, a yug would be an era. It actually goes. The Satyug lasts for around 10, 100,000, lakh, 10 lakh, 17 lakh 28,000 years, or 4,800 divine years.
Yeah, so it's a crazy number.
Yeah, a divine divine years are actually a lot of years, a certain amount, which I have no clue about, but maybe
it's a weird
50 years would like be one divine year, or like a whole century would be like a divine year, somewhere there. And from there we get to this very weird stage which is called Treta Yug. And
there you go.
Treta Yug is that this yug has, so this yug lasts that's like,
what's up?
It's the same. It's 12 lakhs 96,000 human years.
And for those folks that don't know what a lakh is, a lakh is 100,000.
Yes. And even I know it now. This is strange, man. This is the time where Ram also comes in. This is the time of all of our mystical ideas coming into representation, play, and sculpturism. Mandir being one of the key places now. The community is increasing, it's expanding. And after that, we have Dwapara. I have no clue about this one. I have no clue.
And also, I guess, this is obviously like a mythological.
It is a philosophical
history.
Like it's a mythological,
philosophical, also mythological, but it doesn't map onto like the actual history, like in terms of.
But anyways,
it's more metaphorical and stuff like if you read like credible sources of history, it doesn't necessarily map onto that in a way that
it actually doesn't map
convenient.
on with the Western timeline. So a lot of Indian archaeologists speak about how the Western timeline has been adulterated, or it's spun around the BC time and the AD time, right? But Indian archaeologists speak of a time which is way beyond and before this time, where languages in Western civilization were not even a thing. It didn't even exist, where before that we were writing on dried leaves, and we were creating information that could be passed on way before people could actually start dating stuff to, where is this coming from, through radioactive or isotopic, whatever sample you have. There are no traces of these left because they were all organic material, right? None of them could really withstand the test of time. So there is really less knowledge about all of these things, which is Vimana, which is, talking about airplanes, and you have these same references happening throughout the Vedas, where they have immense knowledge about medicine through plants, and immense knowledge of,
personally,
stars.
I'm pretty skeptical about a lot of those types of things. Like, when it comes to this discourse, like, I'm interested in it, but I accept it more at a metaphorical level. Yeah. Especially because, like, a lot of these, especially when people talk about Indian archaeologists versus, like, Western archaeologists, because, like, there are plenty of Indian archaeologists that even disagree with these claims. So it's like, I like considering these things from a metaphorical point of view, but and also these narratives get used by people that have a bit of a mendacious agenda with regards to our current political climate. So it's like always worth being skeptical of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it is really good from a mythological point of view and a spiritual point of view, right? Like, it connects with ancient spiritual traditions,
a really ancient one.
And the old the ancient sort of Vedic conception of time is cyclical, like it's circular, right?
Yeah.
Which is precisely why at the end of the Kali Yuga we're supposed to go back.
Yeah.
To
that's the
Satya.
same with Mayans, you know. That's the same with all of these ancient folks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
same with the pyramids, with the pharaohs. Is the same with most of the ancient civilizations you go back to. The Indian tribal folks had this similar culture of, you know, everyone has this concept of circle, and you see this circle as design everywhere. So just learning about cultures around the world, I noticed the circle is the most important shape or form existing since a while. And it's a really...
It's a very elementary shape.
Yeah.
And so, you know, circles are all around us in different
forms and
forms,
shapes,
you know,
right?
in the natural world.
Yeah.
So that's there. Also, I mean, another really interesting thing in relation to sort of ancient times and ancient ways of knowing being erased is the Bronze Age collapse. Have you ever done any reading about the Bronze Age collapse?
Yes, so I've actually been learning more about... I'm actually beyond that. I'm near mechanics. I was searching about Rockefeller and all of these guys, just the age of motor when it began. I am still to go way back into the bronze, but you know, you have these basic point headers about bronze.
The interesting
age, you know?
thing about the Bronze Age collapse is that the Bronze Age, we're talking that that was also around when the Harappans were existing. And that was officially also when they were officially a civilization, because there's the Harappan culture, and then there's the Harappan civilization.
Correct.
Like they weren't always like a huge empire. They started off as
very
just
small, correct, in the Middle Eastern section
and that took like thousands of years,
Yeah.
right? And so during the Bronze Age, you had like developed empires around Eurasia. Like, you know, in Egypt, you had the Hittites, I believe, is Cyprus.
Yeah, the Romans
In Greece, you had like proper civilizations, cities, and you had language, literature. They were involved in international trade with each other. And the reason they were involved, I mean, not the reason, but a big part of the trade was the Bronze Age. In order to make bronze, you need two elements. One of them is copper. I forget what the other element is.
Aluminum, I
but
guess?
like not every place had all these elements, so there's like lots of trade networks. And so these different empires were dependent on each other. They might have fought with each other from time to time, but they were also reliant on each other for trade. And then all of a sudden at that time, civilization collapsed. A lot of people don't know about this. Like civilization collapsed, and humans basically went back to like a hunter-gatherer type state in Eurasia. And
that
like
whole
like
section,
language
correct.
was written language was mostly lost. Like all types of things were lost. And what's interesting, I mean, the Bronze Age collapse is interesting for a lot of reasons. Like there's so many reasons why it's interesting, not least of which because, you know, it gives us a bit of an idea of what happens when civilizations collapse, because it seems like we're approaching a point where our current civilization might collapse. And it's similar in that we are a globalized, interconnected, you know,
heavily like this
civilization.
Time, I think during the bronze collapse, I don't think Northern America was even like inhibited the way it is.
Well, with that, it certainly didn't have any Europeans there, but North America is a different story, because you did have North America was definitely populated. North America has been populated, the Americas, but North and South America, they've had people there for thousands and thousands of years. Even during the Bronze Age, there were people over in that part of the world doing their own thing,
right?
And
irrespective.
And that's the interesting thing. So.
But no one's reached there,
these
right?
sort of civilizations that were connected in Eurasia, they all collapsed around the same time, and there's like a confluence of reasons why that happened. Environmental. Then there's this whole thing about this weird invading group that nobody knows anything about called the Sea People. Like there's lots of information about that. But what's interesting in terms of mythology, and what's interesting in terms of our mythology in India, but also the mythology that went on to influence the Judeo-Christian way of thought, is that so all of these societies in Eurasia, excluding China, once you get onto the other side of the Himalayas, it's like
it's
a
a totally
story.
different culture.
They were not involved in this collapse, but that a lot of the mythological stories that we have, it's actually just a way of preserving ancient knowledge. So like imagine if like our civilization collapses and the internet is gone, all the stuff that we have is gone, and we need to embed, like let's say we experience this collapse and we need to like embed knowledge for future generations so that like thousands of years from now, the future generations will know about the fact that a collapse can happen and that they need to like, you know,
Prepare
get their
themselves.
shit together basically. What do you do? How do you embed that knowledge? So there is like basically a theory that suggests that a lot of the shared mythological stories that we have, it basically is a way of our ancestors in Eurasia trying to communicate with us to say, hey, like, look, this collapse happened, and you need to worry about it. You need to be prepared for it. This is what you need to do. And so if you dig back into like the lineage of the different mythological stories that exist within our Hindu traditions, Vedic traditions, however you want to call it, but even the Judeo,
Noah's Ark, everyone.
yeah,
has
like
been talking
you
about
can
that.
see that the stories have been altered a little bit, like depending on the culture of but like there are some commonalities that exist in those stories, and so it's really interesting to see. Like if you just dig into those ancient stories, like what message were those ancient humans trying to tell us from that time, and how have those messages survived into the current moment?
Yeah.
And then if you think of parts of the world that didn't experience that collapse, say cultures in the Americas, cultures in China, cultures in sub-Saharan Africa, they may not have those same myths. They may have different myths embedded in their culture. Like I don't know about this in detail, but this is something I'm really fascinated and interested.
Yeah, it's the
in
same thing
studying.
with South Africa.
It's like
Where the pyramids, the whole civilization, which was residing around the Nile Basin River, where not far off are the pyramids. They used to, you know, general commute here to the pyramids and pyramids to here, but there is no ideation timeline for when their society was just cut off. They just vanished, just like, you know, Mohenjo-daro or other civilizations in the Bronze time. They just vanished. We have no idea of how this shit happened. We have fossilized folks.
So there's archaeologists are slowly figuring it out. The thing that happened with the Harappans is slightly different. And one theory is that basically, like, so there's this common thing that you have with soil degradation, like, and this is the thing with like agriculture. If you keep doing agriculture, you'll get soil degradation. The environment changes. Like, that's a whole basket of issues that happen with just civilizations. Like, you end up, what's the word? You end up exploiting the substrate upon which you live, degrading that substrate, and then you have the potential for collapse. But since we know that the Harappans were a trading civilization. So, and we know that we found Harappan seals in, Mesopotamia and in other parts of Eurasia. So when the societies in the other societies in Eurasia collapsed, shortly after that, the Harappans, one theory is that they collapsed because their trade was cut off. So like, their collapse was a downstream effect of the collapse of the other civilizations in Eurasia at that time. Now, I'm also now starting to go out on a limb. I'm not an expert on this topic, so I'm just kind of like synthesizing the various few things that I've studied and read about. But obviously, like, people should not take my my ramblings as like as a
do your own research, man. I'd say that to everyone, man. Do your own research. Do not believe anyone whenever they say anything. If you don't think that's right information, just go ahead, research, man. There's so much to know about everything.
Sorry. So okay, that was a fun tangent. Also, I love history, and I really
you're talking about synthesis, bro.
I recommend that everybody.
Let's go back to this topic of synthesis. There's this one place you should really go, man. It's here in Mumbai. I don't know if you know about the studio called Space Cat Studios. Bro, this is a synth heaven. They've got an ARP Odyssey. This guy has some really nice synthesizers, man. He's got a Voyager. He's got two drum machines. There's some really nice. I don't know, man. He's made this custom patch, this custom frequency modulation synthesizer, and it's crazy, bro. You should check that place out. It's run by one of my friends called Tamzid. He's this crazy synth enthusiast, and that whole place is jamming.
Hey man, after this COVID situation dies down, let's go.
110%. If you like synthesis, this is the place to be.
Synthesis is something I've really been getting into over the last few years, and it is a really fun world, really interesting world, and it's sort of kept music composition interesting for me because like I was feeling I was getting to a place where I was just coming up with the same type of beats and the same type of sounds, and I was playing the same type of things over and over again, and so then it's like, well, what do I do? How can I kind of inspire myself to do something new? And also, again, all my instruments are locked up in Toronto, so I had to find new ways of creating sounds. And so synthesis was a great way of doing that. Yeah, but I mean, we could talk about that. I could ramble on about that for a while, but we have been talking for, I mean, well over an hour, and we haven't even spoken about your music or kind of like how you got to where you are. So let's do that because I would like people to kind of know about.
Let's do that. Okay, I'll do this. I'll wrap this whole decade in like a quick format. Okay?
Don't be quick. I mean, we got time. I mean, there's no time limit on this podcast. So you were a founding member of Mumbai's Finest. You were kind of there in the beginning of the like real hip hop in India. Like because when this is before I moved, but I mean, when I moved here and before like all this like gully rap stuff is popping off, the type of stuff that you would hear like in the mainstream was kind of crazy, terrible stuff like this Yo-Yo Honey Singh type shit that was really awful and appropriative. And just
at that time, actually, Yo-Yo wasn't even famous as a commercial guy. He was more famous as this, if you could say memes would exist or meme people would exist, he'd be that guy. Because he had these, bunch of vulgar songs that would really cater to these young college kids.
When you say at that time, what time are you talking about?
Is it like 2009, 2010?
So no, okay. So I'm talking about 2015 when I moved here, and a little bit before that. Like say 2014.
When you moved in,
like
correct.
You hear this guy, and it was like people would call it rap. You definitely wouldn't call it hip hop. It was just like a really cheap imitation of like. Of what somebody might think rap is, and it was pretty hard to listen to for me. And at that time I almost really wanted to do some like remixes of it as a way of trolling it, and I couldn't find any of the acapellas. But I felt like I wanted to do some almost like trolling type remixes.
It's the Indian market, man.
Well, I mean, I want to tie this into like the real hip hop that's emerged because you're a founding member of Mumbai's Finest, and before we hit record, you were talking about how when you were starting out, it was just pure hip hop, like even the sort of aesthetic around gully rap and all that stuff hadn't sort of developed yet. So can you take me back to those early, forget Yo-Yo Honey Singh and that shit. I only bring that up. The only reason I brought that up was just to tell people that stuff existed and it was horrible and really appropriative of rap culture without, with like it was like really appropriative of rap culture without any of the hip hop, like the real.
But that's what Bollywood does. It always, it's like a culture vulture. It knows whenever to start picking up on something that is trending.
But see, like, say, like later on when you have a movie like Gully Boy, that's like still way different than that Honey Singh stuff, which is just horrible. It's like a mockery. Like it's an insult to rap like that. That's I feel I have no problem saying that publicly. Like it's insulting to rap and hip hop culture. But what the reason why I set it up that way is because now, and I mean you're proof that it was building up and bubbling up for a long time, and now, especially in the time that I've been living here, the actual hip hop, the real hip hop that actually does pay proper homage to the culture, the hip hop culture is there, and it's blowing up in a good way. And I mean, you're in a good position to talk about the origins of that, much better position than I am. So that's the reason why I set it up that way, because I really wanted to contrast it from that really, really horrible stuff.
So, you know what I'd say is,
sorry, go ahead.
At that time, around 2010, it was all about, you know, there wasn't much streaming, there wasn't much internet. We still needed dial-up and shit to, like, you know, get access to stuff. So, most of our stuff was revolving around things we're listening to through some of our friends, or asking some of our friends to download this and give it to us some way. And access to hip-hop music was really less. So whatever we could get hands on, we would analyze, abuse, replay, and understand how much ever we could.
What was some of the first artists you guys were listening to?
I think the first artist everyone here would be listening to would be either 50 Cent or Eminem.
Okay.
And if we're going into something in a space where they know what they're listening to, then that's happening after a very long amount of time. I think a year or two. Varna, majorly, you know, it's that Eminem song or that Snoop and Dr. Dre song that blew up. Still they blew up here. And Akon. Akon has been this guy who has exposed really young minds to, you know, this idea of R&B and hip hop in a certain way where it became stable for us. The sound for, you know, most of the young folk.
And he did a song in a Bollywood film as well.
Yeah, that was way later on.
Yeah.
I think that was 14 or 15, but
something around that time. Maybe even 13. So, I don't know.
The market has already, you know, around 2010, we were all more focused towards the competitive aspect of rap, where it be more about, you know, the rap battles and the ciphers, where who is giving the most hardest 16 bars in the cipher, who is...
See, that's proper. That's proper. Yeah. And that's why people need to know, like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, the scene that's there now, it has roots in the same kind of way that the hip-hop culture started in the West, right?
Yeah. And it was very similar to what you'd hear from there to here. It was a very community-oriented thing where we'd all would meet up. I'd have this big boombox which had like 6 AAA batteries, and then connected to an aux.
That's
and then
legit.
Connect that aux into like a computer, because most of our phones didn't have any music playing compatibility. So we'd be playing it through this, you know, fuck all eyeball laptop I had. And, you know, just Primo beats or Ninth Wonder beats. We were all NY. Like, I don't know why, but most of us really loved the NY sound in Mumbai, specifically. We really loved the beat formats. We've all grown up on our Rakim and Eric B and Primo to Ninth Wonder and all of these guys, you know, were our starter kit as to using beats and taking references. So, but as, you know, 2-3 years pass by, we understand that let's turn it up a notch. Let's try to make songs, right? But we're still doing English stuff. Nobody really started rapping in Hindi back then. We were all sort of mimicking what we're hearing. Trying to
makes sense.
Trying to understand that accent and trying to mimic that accent so that we can get those styles of flows. But as time passes by, you know, a lot of times me and Divine and Ace, you know, we discuss then how do we make this our own? We can't do it with our beats. We can't afford to do that with our beats. Okay, fine. But how can we make this more own, you know, owning to the sound and making it an Indian thing? How do we do that? Authenticity, right? And I guess, so the inception of, you know, I'd say the term gully was when me, Divine, Ace, we were just sitting and I had this one random beat from this producer, random guy, SoundClick. You know, we used to take some beats from SoundClick.
Oh, yeah, SoundClick. Yeah.
So, I just had this chorus, which involved like getting tully in my gully. It just had this term where being tully in my gully with my buddies, man, which was just me getting drunk with my boys in the gully and we're having fun, doing the drunk dance. So from there, I think everyone was like, whoa, this is interesting. We released that song really later on, I think 2014 or 15. But after that, we understood, okay, let's do this shit in Hindi. Let's fuck that English stuff. We'll use English references and we'll use some words, but let's just try molding this whole pattern and composition style into a Hindi format.
Yeah. It's really key. It's really key that you guys understood that aspect, that it had to be authentic.
No, you know why we understood that?
Yeah.
It's really important to know. It's also because of Honey Singh. It's also because seeing all of these other guys do that same concept in an Indian format, get more relatability factor. And people were sort of, you know how sometimes the listener wants to be the singer and he recites as if it's him?
Mm-hmm.
That approach was what we wanted with our people as well, because whenever we do it in English, we'd still be this foreign stranger to our people, and that felt really bad, like if my own people can't connect with me or to the thoughts that I'm trying to tell them, it doesn't matter if I'm doing it in English or whatever the fuck language you want to call it. So that is, I think, during 2015 that the whole scene stepped its game up. By that time, Divine left the crew. I think it was 2015-16. And we had to regenerate another player. So we got Nasty Ninja on board. And from there, we all, came to the same page that we'll do an EP or an album, but we do it nicely or we don't do it. So... from there, everyone, started putting up their game. We were more into audio. I've been mixing since, I think, 8 years, but it was just more out of need before. There was no one who could, record rap vocals. They did not understand the gain staging idea or concept of rap. They did not understand what hot recordings were. They did not get why rap vocals are comped so heavily. So I had to, learn all of these things. And as I was learning, I was spreading it out to everyone that, yo, guys, we need to step this shit up. We need to enhance our drum sounds. Our kicks are not coming through. If we listen to Western, records and our records, kicks were not coming through, man. In those times, those were our muddy times, I'd say. So most mixes were, really muddy on the lower end, and no one really had an idea, man.
Everybody got to go through that phase, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%. So, by the time, 5 years have come down the line, this whole community stuff has now changed to this online thing. And this is where, I think everyone's taken their own direction. So, Divine went into the whole gully thing, where his brand aesthetic is, coming from the gully and stuff. I actually just got bored with rap. I just got done. Yeah, I was just, for me, around 16, I was so bored with rap, or just bored with rapping in a way where, at some point of time, you're just tired of doing the same thing again and again in different formats, or the same thought or motive. So I took a break. And everyone else also, a lot of my peers, I'd say, Encore and Poetic Justice, some of my producer friends also, Crazy Vibe, all of these guys, everyone took a break and they were like, I want to do this, but I really need to find my sound. So everyone, understood, even Ace in my crew, everyone understood that we need a sound and a purpose. So I don't know, whatever tracks you've heard from me, you'd understand that it's me by the time you've heard 8 or 9 tracks in a go. Musical composition styles can change, but my content or theme sort of matches and keeps on matching a general palette. And this is where, by 2018, everyone understood what they are. So now when you go and you see the Mumbai hip-hop movement, it's way more diverse than other cities, is because everyone knows their place. No one is trying to be the king of the throne, No one else wants to be a Divine, No one else wants to get into a position where they're number one. We all want to make our own spaces, which are running independently, non-functional of other spaces. Doesn't really matter. We're still in the same thing, but we're not competitors. We don't need to compete. And that is the, I think the idea we're all rolling with, but since I'd say the 10 years, we still have a bit more time to go for understanding general aesthetics as an artist. There are very few people which when you have to or want to listen to them. Like you'll play Divine when you're going to the gym, or maybe playing football, or doing something energetic or active. When to listen to Encore. Have you heard of Encore? Or his stuff?
Yeah, I have actually.
Yeah. So when to play Encore. Encore is playing when you want to smoke a doob with your friends, chilling in the back, and it spaces everyone's. You know when to listen to D Evil. Like there's always a time for D Evil in the day. So there's like a space everyone's created. This character and this what would you say? A brand which took time. Or these 10 years were essential for us for sort of making this architect blueprint thing for the whole scene, so that when new kids come in, they know what to do. But that's the problem now. I am actually not a fan of everyone turning up and going into rap. I am not a really pro on promoting everyone. Yeah, let's turn the scene into something big. Everyone rap. I'd say stop that. I'd say that to like at least 50 folks. Yeah, like maybe
Wait,
I'm a bitch.
that reminds me of certain rap songs in the 90s. Like that's it's really interesting. It mirrors the whole progression mirrors
the time frame. Yeah.
Like too many MCs, not enough mics, or like what's the De La Soul track as well? Like there was a time in the 90s when a bunch of hip hop records were addressing the fact that everybody wanted to rap. Like you don't hear songs about that anymore, about this idea that everybody wants to rap. But like there was this moment in the 90s where it was like there was people were actually writing songs about that, and I'm scratching my head about the
right
De La
now
Soul song.
it's more about the beef shit. And I don't like the concept that hip hop has turned so competitive here that every time someone drops a track, someone's trying to compare that track with another track. And there's this spree of
if you're smart, you don't have to pay too much. Like that has the potential to bother you as much as you kind of choose to fuck with it, right? Like if you're smart, you can just keep your head down and do your thing, right?
And that's what I generally say to young folks who want to get into this, or anyone who wants to get into this. Think twice before you want to do this. If you're just doing this because you think you're gonna get famous and shit, or this is fun, well, it is. But at one point of time, it gets really hectic. And finding fun again.
I can never tell anybody to not do it if they're having fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a big thing for me personally. Like especially now, like I just turned 37. I've been doing random music shit for years. I started off in hip hop. I haven't actually made a hip hop record in a long time. But all the first like kind of, that's not true. On my own, I'm making hip hop.
Their influences. It's the same thing with me, I guess.
The thing I just released, my like most recent solo release is a beat tape, so it's pretty hip hop. But like when I'm producing for other artists, like I've just mostly produced rock artists, indie rock, pop, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I started out in hip hop, when I was in Toronto, and even before that, like just making beats, and I still make beats. Like at a personal level, there's the hip hop is very much in my life, but and now that I've been through so much between, like being bounced around between two continents and having so many starts and stops and so many failed projects that never saw the light of day, and then like the ones that did see the light of day and some success, and like there's a whole sort of arc of things that I've experienced, and the different people that I've had the chance to meet, the people that I potentially had the chance to compete with, but decide I'm not a very competitive person, so I just choose to be inspired by people instead of competing with them. But the thing that I realize, and the only thing that keeps me going, is searching for that fun.
Yeah, man.
Right? Like
I think a lot of people
let me have the joy. Let me have the joy and let me experience. So I could never. If somebody is having fun making music whether it's hip hop or any other kind of music, I can never be like, oh, you shouldn't
Yeah.
do it. You know, I would say, you know, try to make sure you have a different source of income. That might even be better. Like if you have a different source of income, then you can fully commit to just doing music for fun, and then you're blessed as far as I'm concerned. But I feel you on the other tip. Like
if you're
like
taking
a lot
it as
of people,
a job, you know, like if it's your full-time thing, I've done this like as a full-time thing, and frankly speaking, if I'm just making music as an independent artist, I'm just churning money out. There's no churning money in. To be specific,
especially in this day and age. In this day and age,
I've learned more through composing or writing for other people, or mixing and mastering records than like my own music. I think I spend more on my music than it gives me back. But I don't really give a damn. I have fun.
Oh yeah,
like my masters take like 4K, like. There's fucking shitloads of gear happening everywhere, and I'm booking studios just for that gear and shit, and there's like a song coming for 15K, and I get like shit in return. But it doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like,
the fun thing is important. The other thing you said about like people assuming that it's glamorous and they're going to get, like fame or just some boost for their reputation. That's bullshit. Like if that's your main motivating factor, then I would say just stop, right?
Yeah.
Or I would say stop or accept that you're probably not going to have a lot of fun. Like if your main thing is you want the glamorous kind of lifestyle and all that, then you're going to experience a lot of bullshit. And also if you're doing it just for high profiling and like your reputation, then you're gonna have to actually pay attention when people start beef with you. Like if you're doing it just for fun, like you don't have to pay attention when people are trying to get up in your shit, trying to fuck with you in one way or another. And there's so many ways that people can fuck with you, right? Like there's so many, there's like overt beef. I mean, hip hop culture has the thing of beef in it, but like there's overt diss and all that kind of stuff. But even just like behind the scenes, right? Like even other people, other producers, other artists saying stupid shit. Like that, if you care about, like, if you want to get into it for the fame, glamour, etc., reputation, then you find yourself in a situation where you have to care about that. Yeah. And then it stops being fun pretty quickly, starts affecting your mental health pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's what's happened with me, man. I think, that's what happened with me. And while like in 17, I just realized that I wasn't having any fun anymore. I just realized, what the fuck?
The fun,
this shit got really serious.
You gotta hold on to that fun. I mean, that is
it just got really serious.
Thing. Yeah.
I was getting crazy angry over like stupid things, like this last chord sounds a bit weird. Should I like add one more voicing, or like stupid stuff, man? Like the snare, like maybe I should layer one more snare. But it's stupid criticism.
The snare is never going to be okay.
Yeah.
The snare is always shit. The snare is always shit. That's the rule, right? Forget it. Like you can never have a good sounding snare. It's impossible. But that's what I mean. Like the fun.
It's general, man.
It has to be there.
And honesty.
I mean, like, because then
and honesty. As an artist, like I feel a lot of artists are not honest. They're not honestly projecting emotions that they are trying to talk about. And I can hear it. I don't know why. Like. But if you make me listen to a record and the singer is not really feeling that and he's singing it, then I can really tell you that, it's cool. He's singing it in pitch. Oh, yeah. He's singing it in everything, precision, but there's no feels in him,
Yeah. Well, I got to be able to believe it. And as a producer, that's usually what I'm looking for in an artist. It's usually what I'm trying to bring out in an artist. Like if I'm working with an artist,
it's actually what even our listeners are looking for. That like sometimes there are these vocals, right? They're not well tuned vocals, as we say, quote unquote, or perfect pitch vocals, but they have this feeling and texture to them that are such honesty in them. Like, have you heard of that record, Big Jet Plane? By
I haven't.
Why do I forget these artists? I think it's like a 15-year-old record, but that female, the way she sings, she will convince you that she's taking you somewhere,
Yeah.
And
the best artists will do that. There are very few artists that can take you to that place in a sterile kind of way. And usually when those kind of artists are successful, it's only for a short time. Like the timeless music, it has to resonate at an emotional level. And that stuff is more important than even the mixing and the mastering and the gear and all that stuff, right? You got to have that authenticity. And even in terms of collaborations, that's what I look for. Like when I started out, when I moved to Toronto, I'm just like some skinny Indian kid from Newfoundland. Who's going to take me seriously? I was just like looking to record anything, like any experience to record anybody, I was going to take it. But now when I'm looking for, especially that's actually a big part of the reason why I haven't done an actual hip hop record in a collaborative sense with anybody in a long time, is because now, like I've recorded a bunch of rap tunes. And they're there, like they exist. Even they were even put out at one time. This is years ago. But now it's like if I want to make a hip hop record, I want to work with a lyricist and MC that really makes me feel something. It just can't be like about anything, right? Like maybe I'll do it, or it has to be fun.
And with MCs, I think it's a thing, right? Like MCs need to convince you. If they can't, you're not gonna believe them. Imagine if Eminem wouldn't be able to convince me that he's that crazy, then I'm never gonna be listening to him, because I don't think he's that crazy. I think he's just lying. That's the thing with vocals. I've never really learned singing or learned most of this stuff. I've just, like you said, I've just taken the opportunity to do whatever possible. So when I was working at Yash Raj, I'd do shitloads of stuff. I'd record, I would wire up all the stuff. I would do whatever they tell me, I'd ask them if I can use the gear whenever, nothing's happening, so that I could just have an idea of how this gear sounds, how a CL2 actually sounds. And stuff like that, that you get in tuned with. You don't have options. Like when you're starting off, you don't really have options. Just do whatever comes your way. Now you can, do whatever you want, but that's because for a reason that know so much.
And some people use the excuse like I can't do anything until I get this type of equipment or this type of microphone.
Yeah, it's excuses, man.
Yeah, it's like you can make it work with whatever you got. I mean, it's sort of like when
beautiful guitars through 2 Rode NT1As, one hanging through a fucking fan and one just placed on the ground. It is legitimately placed on the ground right below the singer, because he was on the floor. He was singing on he was sitting on the floor. There was no furniture in the room. And brilliant room with such brilliant reverb. Like the reverb in that room was and so
is this Yash Raj?
Yeah. Huh?
Is this at Yash Raj?
No. This is in this really small house in Warsaw. Maybe it'd be like a 1 HK, a hall kitchen.
Yeah.
And
what part of town are you based in right now?
I am in Andheri, right near Lokhandwala.
So I'm in Lokhandwala right now. So we're very close.
We've met, bro. We've met with Jason and
I know that, but I didn't know where you were based. If you're near Lokhandwala, we're very close by.
Yeah,
right?
very close.
We're
very close.
Yeah. So you gotta be willing to work with what you got. I mean, it was same deal when I moved over here, right? Like I had all my gear was locked up, so I just had to make it work. Whatever you take away all my instruments, I just figure out a new way to make sounds.
Yeah.
Whereas you could just throw your hands up and say, hey, but I don't have the right equipment. I can't do, and then you just it's an excuse. You can always figure out a way.
I have actually put this to work where I restrict myself purposely. Mm-hmm. So there are times where I'm composing and I restrict myself purposely. Like I restrict myself from not using any kick sample from like a sample and making a kick through an FM synthesizer. Or sometimes I just lock myself that you can only put a chord progression and then you have to start songwriting and then only you can proceed to making something else. So actually when you start restricting is when the creative mind starts to, wander off to places where it's trying to get these alternative processes.
That's a pro tip. That's a pro tip. A lot of people don't realize.
For anyone listening right now, I use a 4 GB Mac 2012 model with a Waves bundle and no plugin. It's just Analog Lab 4, all right? And I have a PC that is 10 years old, has 8 GB RAM, and I think 4-core processor. I have 4 VSTs in that as well. I've never used outside samples. I've never really complained that I don't have outside samples. And I think I'm getting the job done. So I don't know why people crib about, I need Omnisphere, I need Contact. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like,
I hate Omnisphere. I don't know why people like that shit.
I hate Omnisphere, bro.
Is whack.
Same.
I'm just gonna say
I think Omnisphere is like this stupid fucking VST that is just making everything sound the same. It's
Omnisphere is horrendous. I don't know why people use that VST. It's awful.
But I get it, if you don't know synthesis, or if you don't know how to get like a pop sounding synth, you just go get the fucking pluck or get that stupid guitar and just play it, put some bleed in, tick 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 tack tack tack. That's it, done. Like in 45 minutes you're done with the whole song, right? So it's like a fast food thing. That's what I noticed with a lot of these songs, which are made by these construction kits and Omnisphere and like loops and shit. They're just fast food music. They'll be heard.
Yeah, I mean,
and they'll be forgotten.
It can get to that point. I mean, that's the thing. Like it's like that with anything, right? Like if you follow like some people develop a certain sort of process and they just stick to that process, and then that's just their formula. But that's not like that. I've also been put through situations where I wasn't allowed to stick to the same process because my circumstances changed. But now I'm used to it, and it's like now I get bored of the thing that I was doing for the last 2 years, so I want to try something new. And so, I'm the kind of person, I'm always going to be looking for that new kind of approach.
Man. Always
let me load in some weird, granular synthesizer and general, and let me start with that, or let me like you said, let me start with
that, man. I started granular synthesis. This is really interesting.
It's a fun time. It's very weird. It's very different than the other types of synthesis.
Texture, right? Such texture-ish.
But also, like, you can't even have the same mentality. Like, it's not like, when you start with granular synthesis, you almost have to like think of it as a completely different.
Yeah.
Because like even between FM synthesis and subtractive synthesis, there's like some similarity, even though they're different. And even with physical modeling synthesis, it's like, okay, cool, I get it. But
granular is totally different,
granular, it's a different world, and it's lots of fun to explore. I've just kind of
especially
been fucking around with it
stuff,
recently.
Man. I think granular synths works very well when you start, automating those LFOs, and you start creating these weird inner wobbles happening with the sound, and it's a really interesting space.
And also, you don't know what you're gonna get because of depending on what sample you dump into it. Like with the big difference between granular synthesis for me that I've discovered so far between granular synthesis and say FM or subtractive or physical modeling synthesis is with those other 3 types of synthesis. Like I can have an idea of what I want to do, and then like I can either execute that idea or like get into a ballpark or accidentally get into some tangent. But that's different. But with granular synthesis, the idea that I like, the whole concept of having an idea before I go in and expecting a certain result is just off the table. You don't know what you're going to get. You're actually just experimenting. So that's the fun thing about granular synthesis, and I really want to get into it even more. But I
think I credit Flume for this. I credit Flume heavily for introducing me to like granular synthesis. Most of his older albums, 2016 albums have these granular synths, and you listen to his textures and you'll be like, whoa, what the...
Well,
that guy's crazy.
I don't know any particular... I didn't get into to granular synthesis because of any artist. I just got into it because I just went through the different types of synthesis. I was like, okay, subtractive, cool. FM, cool. What's next? And then I just ended up was like, okay, the next thing is granular. So let's figure it out. Yeah. But it's forgetting all of those technical terms, like just for creativity, you want to have these different starting points, right? Like you can't, like I remember reading some interviews with producers or there's some magazine, and they'd be like, what's your process? How do you start? And some produce like, I always start with the drums, and someone else like, I always start with the melody. And it's like, for me, it's like, no, like have like at least 50 different starting points.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like,
It's weird.
like let me start today by just designing a drum kit from scratch by using field recordings. And that's going to be my starting point for today. Tomorrow, my starting point will be that like I'm dumping in some old Hindi song and I'm just going to slice that song. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm just going to keep slicing it until I get something I like. And that's my starting point. And then the next day after that, I'm going to maybe take out my guitar and I'll just record myself improvising for 10 minutes and then cut that up. And that's my starting point. And then, you know, then if I'm working
generally, like that's what
Yeah.
I do as well. You know, sometimes I don't even make the music, but I have a few lines already done. So I have like 2 lines done in my head. So I'm gonna start something, you know, that is complementing that line. So it could be anything. Maybe it's drums or maybe it's chords. I don't know. Sometimes I just limit myself to not writing and just composing a certain section and then writing on top. So it's you can start with several different points. I sometimes actually do this where I take the whole beginning chord or whatever progression I made, shove that to the right, and take that same chord progression, fuck it over totally, and make this like the actual song. And that chord is just like an intro that comes and fucks off. So whatever.
Have you ever heard of ghost sampling?
Ghost sampling.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I heard about this technique was with Timbaland, and basically, like, he would load in a sample that he likes, and then he would make a whole beat around the sample, and then like remove the sample.
Oh no, man! I'm gonna do this. What the fuck?
That's a fun idea. Yeah, so that's what I mean. There's like lots of different like ways. Like that's why I always get really. I find it really strange when people only have like 1 or 2 different processes or ways of making a track, because there's just so many different ways. Yeah, like and like that doesn't mean that you're copying the sample in your instrumentation. It's just like the sample is there. You make something around the sample and then just remove the sample. Or another thing you can do is go on YouTube, find a random acapella. Make a remix of the like. Don't even bother listening to the original song. Make like treat it like you're doing a remix of the song, and just make a fresh beat for that whatever acapella you find. Then just remove the acapella, and you have a track that you can just write your own song to.
That's a really good way.
Yeah, there's like infinite different ways you can approach this.
Especially this one is good, you know, for producers who just learning composing. A lot of producers nowadays don't know the difference between just making a beat and composing a song. So this is a really nice way for them to, you know, learn.
Remixing is a good way to build your producing chops. Anyway, like you don't even have to remove the vocals. You can just say I'm doing a remix, and then when my rules for doing a remix is obviously to just make something that sounds as different as possible than the original song. So. Sometimes I don't even listen to the original song. Like I will intentionally try to find vocals for a song that I've never heard, and then I intentionally will not listen to. Intentionally won't listen to the original song and see what I can do. If it's a song that I know, then like I'm making it a point to make sure that the chord progression is different, that the harmony is different. If I can somehow fuck with the sense of what key it's in, I'll do that. All of these things are really good practice. And then like I said, if you just need inspiration, find some random vocals, make an instrumentation for your own instrumentation for the vocals, and then remove those vocals. And then it's like, oh, cool. You know, like it's another type of ghost sampling.
There's so many ways. Like I guess with this ghost sampling way, I could tell you like a few of my friends who produce. Sometimes, you know, they're listening to this one song, they really like this song, the way the chordings progress, right? They just drag and drop that into a Melodyne, find out like the chord progression for the song, and just flip it over totally. Like it doesn't sound anywhere near that song. You know, they've just taken inspiration for that chord progression and altered it with a few voicings of their own, and they just, you know, make it a whole totally different new idea. So there's several ways to approach, you know, start. It's just that you should start. You rather than just complaining and shit, you just begin. Right?
That's the most important part, is to start.
Just start.
Starting and finishing, those are the two hardest parts. Everything in between
finishing is actually more important than start. I would say that being a person, fucking standing on fucking 120 fucking drafts that are still left to do, and I still believe in them, I would say that get shit finished, or you'll be ending up like me, releasing 3 to 4 songs every month, and you're still cluttered with like shitloads of old songs, and I'm still releasing old songs.
That's what lockdown
All
is
my
for.
songs are old, bro. That's the weirdest thing. These are not fresh joints.
I also like the idea of releasing, like making things quickly, and that takes time. It takes time. It takes time to get to the point where you're just like, yeah, like I'm just gonna make a track in like a couple of days, and that's something I started doing after I moved over here as well. Definitely that YouTube series Against the Clock.
That is good ethics, you know.
It also got to the like. It's easier when you get to a point where you don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
Because of the sort of age I'm at, I like don't feel obligated to go along with any trend, and also because I'm not super competitive, I'm just okay with not being as good as other producers. Like, to be fully honest, like I just really enjoy making something. So like when I was younger, I was more insecure about, oh man, like I gotta be good, and like if it's not as good as, if it's not as good as what my friend is doing. But like now I just don't care, because I've just met so many musicians that are amazing, and so if if I constantly compare, then I'm never going to get anything done. And so it goes back to that state of fun. And so now because I approach it more from a state of from a place of trying to have fun and trying to capture a sense of joy, so it's easier to finish stuff quickly. And I get frustrated with artists when something takes too long. Now, when people hire me to produce music for them, then it's like, okay, like they're paying me to do this. It's going to take time, and so that's why when I'm making stuff for myself, I'm trying to do it quickly. Like it's just it's a burst of activity, of joy for myself. And I mean, the beat tape that I just released is all beats that were made in that way. Like it's 17 tracks, and each beat on that was just like, okay, let me just let's see what I can make. Let's see what I can just make right now.
Even the way you've been chopping on them, I totally get it. Like I was hearing the tape, I totally understand that approach. You know that it's a vibe. Yeah. And you either get it or you don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do that and you just follow through and just finish these mini ideas, then you actually end up with a project that you can put out, and you maybe weren't even expecting it. Like when I started making those beats, I was just doing it for practice, because before that I didn't used to sample so much. Like if I was sampling myself, but I was like, shit, like let me just try this new approach. And so it was an accident. Like I wasn't trying to think about sampling Hindi songs, because like lots of people have tried that. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, like I'm gonna make a beat tape with all like chopping up old Hindi songs. But because old Hindi songs have so much fun material, and it's just fun to sample. And since I was just trying to have fun in the beginning, just for practice, I was dumping in these old Hindi songs and just having at them. And then when I accumulated about 4 or 5 of those beats, and they all had like a similar vibe, then it was like, oh wow, this is like a vibe. Let me get to a number like about 15 or 17, and when I get to that number, I'll like make it a beat tape. And it was the hardest thing about that beat tape was not making the beats. It was finding those clips of speech and dialogue in the middle that in between the beats. That was much harder. That's the thing that took time. And I got another beat tape coming out like that, except instead of Hindi songs, I'm sampling only music from Toronto, from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s. Yeah, it's like the two beat tapes are supposed to go together, and that beat tape is almost done, and it's the same thing. I'm just trying to. The beats are done. It's just the speech, those clips of speech that I'm inserting. I'm just trying to choose those in a way that I don't feel stupid about it.
Yeah, like, even I do that same thing. Like generally, most of my songs start with an intro sound that is real in nature. It's like either kids playing in the background, or just stuff that gets you into a space where you're sonically, like you enter this other time or space or coloring, and that really helps. These just small, I call them like the crackers. Like they're very small sounds, but they create such heavy impact in the listeners. Narration.
It's a vibe. It creates a vibe.
Yeah.
I wanna after I put out this next beat tape, I wanna it's some stupid shit I want to do, like some silly shit. Like I want to find all of the different news music, like like how the music for news shows is like no matter where you go in the world, it has like a certain vibe.
Yeah.
Like of the nightly news that has a certain kind. So I want to like accumulate like say different music from news shows around the world and just try and make a beat tape.
Crazy.
Or a project where I'm only
Crazy,
sampling
bro.
music from the news.
You should totally do this and get some rappers on board. On this one.
See, I don't want to like put in the effort to get rappers on board. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing. It's like that cuts into my time. Like it fucks with my joy. I'm just trying to put because like I will work with rappers if there's like somebody that I like. Somebody's got lyrics that I can connect with. And also not necessarily connect with, but lyrics that I can respect, right? Like if you explain the lyrics to me and I'm like, okay, like this is not stupid, then sure. But a big part of making the electronic and hip hop influenced stuff that I make on my own, a big part of that is the joy of it is actually not collaborating. Because
it's just you your music. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and it's not like I wouldn't but it's more just like it has to be a vibe. Like you, let's say we're hanging out, we're having fun making beats, and we put down a track together. It has to be in that space because when my normal gig is that I'm producing music for other people, right? Like albums, and usually they're pretty elaborate. Usually we're going into the studio, doing everything properly, miking things up properly. I'm like putting a lot of effort into mixing it and mastering it in a way that like and I got to really pay attention to what the artist wants. Like they're my client. Like I got to work for them and deliver a project that is like at a certain standard. So when it comes to my own shit, I'm just out here trying to have a fun time. And I mean, especially with MCs, with vocalists in general, but it's like if you invest time into trying to collaborate with a vocalist and then they're like sitting on the track for like 3 months or they don't even finish it. That happens so much, and it's just like the reason that I make these beats is just to make them, finish them, put them out, get them out, get like basically what you know how you were talking about, you got like 120 however many just on your hard drive. I'm trying to not have that. I'm trying to like not have anything on my hard drive that it's like I've been sitting on for the last 3 years and I just need to tweak this, man. And like no, like I'm trying to get away from that. I'm just like, yo, I just made this yesterday. There it is on SoundCloud. Like
crazy.
And doing that on a regular basis is practice. It keeps my chops up. And that's the reason why I'm able to have all these different starting points, right? That's the reason why I don't have a set template for making a track. And also, when an artist then like hires me to produce something for them, I have this huge bag of tricks that most producers don't have. You know what I mean? Like there are so many. Every producer is better than me. That's fine. They're all better than me, but I just got a huge bag of tricks.
Yeah,
like
that's
I got
good,
lots of different.
That's what the thing is.
I got a different. That's my thing, right? So it's like I like that. That's what keeps it interesting for me. So yeah, like when it's my own stuff, I'm down. But I'm down to collab with MCs, but it's got to be a vibe. Like I'm not gonna go around chasing them. Like I'm starting to.
I wouldn't force it on anyone. Like me, especially, I don't work with like a lot of vocalists or rappers generally.
Because I'm approaching 40. I can't be chasing people around and be like, hey, did you write? Like, can you finish that verse or whatever?
They should match your frequency of what you want this to, talk about or represent or, stuff like that.
Well, and also like, I'm sort of at a point now where if I'm producing music for somebody else, they're supposed to pay me for it. Like it's not like it's a rare situation now where I'll just for fun, like I'll collab with somebody, right? Like producing music now in that way, like the albums and stuff that I produce. That is kind of like my job. It's one of my jobs. Anyway. And so like when I'm like my beat tape, that's just pure fun. It's pure fun, and it's also public domain. Like I put that, like it's not actually public domain, or it is. I don't even know the logistics behind declaring something public domain. But my beat tape is such that like if you want to rap on it, like you can.
Yeah, you can download it.
Like you could just rap on it if you want. And that's fine. Put it on your mixtape. I don't give a fuck. Like if you want the instrumental, you can have it, but it's still going to be on my beat tape. You know what I mean? Like, and if some other MC wants to rap on it, then they'll have it too. Like it's going to be on their mixtape as well.
It's like an open source thing.
Yeah, that's the purpose of the last beat tape and even the one like that. That's what it is. But it's like if you want like a beat that's exclusive, then you got to pay me for that. Fuck off, right? Like that's the way that is.
That's what it is, man. I've been saying that to most of my students who have been actually teaching how to make beats or just how to compose and shit. That do not do shit for free. Stop this. Stop doing shit for free.
You have to. You have to for a while. Like if you don't like, of course, I had to do so many things for free.
Yeah. But there are different ways,
Yeah.
You can ask for royalty. You can ask for
even now there
are
even now there's situations where I would do things for free depending on the situation. Like if it's just you and me shooting the shit, like you come over on a Sunday, we smoke some doobs and like make fucking track for a laugh. Then like I'm not gonna be like, okay, now you got to give me like 20K or like no, right? Like that's not that like it depends. Like it really depends. There are situations when somebody actually comes up to you and is like, I really like your work. I'd like you to produce a song for me. Then it's like, okay, like let's talk about rates. But again, like you have to have that discretion. I'm not like fun is fun. And you can't lose that joy. So like there's other situations like where I'm just chilling with a friend and maybe we make a track and then it's like, okay, so we put it like I'll put it up on my SoundCloud and you can put it up on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Or we're both just doing it for free. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to lose that feeling as well, but it is hard. It's hard to navigate. It's hard to navigate and balance that, and that is a sign of the times we're in, right? Like, how many artists are actually making money off their recordings? Like, even big name artists aren't making money off their recordings, right? Like, that's just the way it is.
It's more of the things that revolve around the music that are getting them the money than the music,
Yeah, and even that's I think the bottom is gonna fall out of that pretty soon as well. I mean, you're seeing with the COVID thing, like. All of a sudden people aren't even able to play shows. I think the whole idea of like being an artist is going to change a lot.
Yeah.
Like we're only in the middle of it. We're only in the middle of it. Like it's going to continue to change. It's already changed so much since the era when you would go and buy CDs and stuff. And it's going to continue to change. And I've said this a bunch of times on my podcast, it's not going to be stars and fans. It's going to be artists and patrons.
Yes.
And the whole, like, I don't think we've seen the end of this shift. Like, it's going to continue to change and evolve. And the relationship that artists have with the listener in 10 years is going to be unrecognizable, I think. I think it's going to be quite different.
It's going to be way more intimate, I feel, It's going to be way more real, I feel, like in these 10 years, I think artists are going to realize that fans are not just fans and they are actually a source of their income. They are also
the word fan, the whole
it's kind of strange
paradigm.
I don't like it.
The paradigm of fan it doesn't work for our times. It's like it worked for the time when I was growing up. Like when you were growing up, then this concept of stars and fans made sense because that was the reality. But in our time, it doesn't make any more sense. And the word fan kind of puts the artist at this like elevated level. Like, the fan is down here looking up at the artist. And I just don't think it's going to be like that anymore. Like artists are going to have to get a lot more humble. And, in the meantime, the means of production are more accessible than they ever have been.
Yeah.
And also, like, there's just going to be so many people making content. Like, just go on to YouTube or Bandcamp or SoundCloud or on any given day, and there's just so much face-meltingly good stuff available. It's just so overwhelming.
People, man. You heard of this guy called John Dawson?
I haven't.
Bro, this guy is crazy. He's mixing up hip-hop with punk rock and like a bit of neo psy rock, and this guy has this really strange sound. Again, I would predict 2 years dibs, this guy is blowing up crazy. Yeah, you should check him out, man.
There's also new genres of like people
genre
making
blending, bro.
Like,
same. I'm a genre fluid guy. I don't really stick to anything. I just want to say it to
But there's stuff that you wouldn't have even thought of like a few years ago, like
Yeah.
not a few, but like say 10 years, like say like the whole genre of memeified music, like making music to memes, like say what Mono Neon is doing, or like
Yeah.
that drummer that makes those weird short drum compositions to like clips from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like, have you seen that guy? Yeah, like who would have guessed that was going to be a
it's
thing?
strange, right?
Yeah, it's a new type of thing, and so yeah, we're going to see a bunch of changes.
It's been brewing, man.
provided
Actually, it's been brewing. Have you heard of this album called? I don't remember the name, but it's by Trilok Gurtu and Robert Miles. It's a fusion
No.
of you could say psychedelic synth and very Carnatic style drumming. And this whole album,
that's quite cool.
This album sounds so strange, bro. It's like it's like an alien invasion happening in an esoteric time, and it's just exotic, man. This album is exotic. I'll tell you the name once I figure. Wait, I'll tell you the name. We need to know this. And Trilok Gurtu it's just crazy.
Yeah, send me the link for sure.
And Robert Miles, man. These guys have.
But yeah, that's what I mean. There's just so much new and interesting stuff.
Amalgamation of stuff.
The whole, yeah, and music is kind of ahead of it in the sense that like the way that the bottom dropped out of the music industry, that happened in the music industry before it happened in any other industry. Like now it's happening with everything.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's pretty unpredictable, provided that like civilization doesn't collapse.
Yo, it's called Miles Gurtu. The album's called
cool.
This is just taking parts of their names.
All right, I'll look it up.
It's a 2004 album, by the way. I didn't know that.
Really?
I heard it in 2010, but it's really old.
That's yeah. I mean that
yeah.
It's shocking to think how
my
how long
Mac
ago.
is
2004. I was still in university.
Yeah. My Mac is telling me I'm gonna run out of space.
Okay. Well, we should wrap this up. So we've been talking for well over 2 hours.
Yeah,
Do you
bro.
want to say anything quickly about the new song that you just put out?
Nothing. So the new song that I've released right now will be releasing, I think, by the time this podcast is out. Is called Dushman, and I'm actually dedicating this song to one of my friends who committed suicide. And the song was made before this even happened, but I don't know how, man. I sort of have been in this similar space where you can say, I just wanted to give up, get there quick. And it ventures on this idea of how sometimes we can be our biggest enemies. So it's featuring with Mohit, this kid from he stays in Delhi, but I think he's generally staying in the States. He's just stuck here for some time. So me and him, when we began inception of the song, I knew I wanted guitars and some drums. That is it. That's all I wanted on the whole composition, and it's just about our lyrics and the whole vocal melody and all of that. But while I was writing, frankly speaking, I have no clue how I wrote the verse. This is not my general style of writing, because it sort of ventures this very dark territory, which if you are understanding the music that I'm generally putting out, it's in this very idealistic, dreamy, surreal neo space. But this is really dark. It's like, what if, I don't know, it's these Kurt Cobain thoughts, in my head sometimes. And the song is just about how sometimes you need to stop living up to others' expectations of you, and you need to just love yourself. Stop giving a fuck about the world sometimes, at least. Not all the times, but
that's a whole nother conversation, and you might run out of disk space. But before you run out of space, how do people find you on socials and stuff?
On
Online,
socials,
where can people find you?
Stop following me. I'd say just stop fucking following me. If you really want to do stuff, just go on my Spotify. Follow me there. I am mostly anti-social general places. You won't find me on Facebook. Major source is YouTube or Spotify. That's about it. If you really want to talk to me or get in contact with me, you could go to Sahir is online. sahiris.online. I'm there generally if you ever want to talk about anything. I'm available, ready to help. Yeah, and also I have mail if you want to get back to me or keep knowing about new stuff I'm releasing. There's a newsletter I do every month where I write custom personal mails to everyone in the list, and I also recommend you a few books and movies to watch out for if you're into the music that I make. Very similar to the music that I make, and yeah, just some nice homely stuff.
Cool. Well, let's you can stop the recording now before you run out of space.
Crazy.
And then
See you
we'll
guys.